I was only 16 years old when my friends and I decided to try summoning a demon. With the naive curiosity of a child, we researched the process and attempted to summon the demon. Before every session, we were already trembling with fear, but none of our attempts were successful. I was probably the most interested in the subject and really wanted to have a successful session, but my friends started to get bored. I tried summoning the demon on my own for a while, but I thought I wasn't capable of doing it, so I gave up. A few months later, I started having nightmares and strange things began to happen to people I didn't like tripping and falling or losing their balance and falling off their bikes. It seemed strange, but I thought it was just a coincidence at the time. When I turned 18 and started university, I moved in with a friend. My friend worked nights, so I was often alone in the house. Some nights, I felt like I wasn't alone and would scream, "Is someone there?" inside the house. On one of these nights, I suddenly felt the room get cold and I shuddered. It was like someone was right next to me. When I turned around, I didn't see anyone, but I started having trouble breathing. Thinking my blood pressure had dropped, I ran to the bathroom and splashed water on my face. Suddenly, I heard a metallic voice whisper my name from behind. My hair stood on end. When I felt a cold hand touch my shoulder, I realized I was terrified and screamed. I ran out of the house. The streets were empty at night, and there were only dogs around. Although I usually get along with dogs, that night they were growling and barking at me. Suddenly, I noticed 7 or 8 shadows around me, all of which resembled humans. They moved like they were dancing. As I felt my blood run cold, I fell to the ground and passed out. My friend woke me up. I must have been out of it for 10 to 15 minutes. He helped me up, and we went back inside. I felt more comfortable with someone next to me. Maybe thanks to my friend, I was able to concentrate on normal life. The next day, I went to many professors I had heard about. Some of them were helpful, I guess. I still hear strange noises from time to time, but I haven't had such a dangerous experience again in my life. Whenever I think about that night, I shudder. If my friend hadn't come that night, I'm scared to think what could have happened. My brother and I were watching a classic horror movie about a haunted house. As we watched, we got more and more scared until I made a careless comment about how funny it would be if something actually happened to us. It was a childish thing to say, and only a few minutes after I spoke those words, the lights started flickering on and off. The television became fuzzy and the screen was filled with static. We panicked and yelled out to each other, wondering what was happening. After a minute or so, the lights came back on and the TV screen cleared up. Just then, the doorbell rang. We rushed to open the door, thinking our parents had returned from their outing, but instead, it was a distant relative who had come to visit us for the holidays. When our relatives came in, we told them what had happened. They tried to reassure us that everything was fine, but we couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. With our parents still not back, my brother and I made a pact to run out of the house immediately if something like that happened again. As soon as we made the agreement, the lights flickered and the TV started fuzzing up once more. We ran outside barefoot, but in our haste, we realized that we had left the house key inside and we didn't have a spare. We couldn't tell our parents what had happened, so we decided to break into our own house by climbing over the neighbor's fence, getting into our backyard, and breaking into the house through a window. I didn't want to do it, but my brother was too scared to stay outside alone, so we both went in. As soon as we got inside, we noticed that the lights were still off and it was pitch black. I groped my way around until I found the door, and we went out into the yard to wait for our parents. We didn't have to wait long before the lights came back on again, and shortly after that, our parents arrived home. After that incident, something changed in me. At first, it was just small things. One day, I went to visit a friend whose brother had just had a baby. When I looked into the baby's eyes, I had a sudden feeling that he was going to die. It wasn't something I could explain, it was just a feeling that washed over me. I didn't dwell on it too much, because it seemed so absurd. But less than a week later, the baby crawled out of his house and fell down the stairs, fatally injuring himself. It shook me to the core, and I couldn't help but wonder if I was somehow responsible for what had happened. One day, while I was at work, I was cleaning out one of our company's 2 large fish tanks. As I was doing so, I noticed that one of the fish was swimming upside down, even though it had been perfectly healthy the day before. It was a brief moment, but it filled me with a sense of dread. I was too scared to confront what I felt might happen next, but the following day, the fish was dead. These experiences kept happening, and I began to feel like I was cursed or somehow responsible for the bad things that were happening around me. But I couldn't tell anyone, not even my brother, because I didn't want them to think I was crazy. Eventually, I started to withdraw from people, convinced that I was better off alone. But even that didn't help. Everywhere I went, I felt like I was being followed by a shadow, like something terrible was always lurking just around the corner. This incident took place when I was 17 years old. It was around 8 p.m., and I had just finished my work in the field. I started heading towards the village on my horse. Suddenly, the horse started acting up and wouldn't move. I couldn't understand why. Then a cold wind started blowing, and I felt it in my bones. I had never felt such a cold wind before. I tried to urge the horse on, hitting it and shouting, and it eventually started moving slowly. I was using a flashlight to light the way, and I saw bloodstains on the ground. The bloodstains continued along the road for about 6 to 11 yards. As we were moving along, the horse became even more agitated. I was wondering what was going on when suddenly I saw a man standing on the other side of the road. It was dark, and I couldn't see his face clearly. He was leaning against a tree. As soon as I got off the horse, the man stood up. He stood up in a strange way though, very quickly. In a single leap, he jumped up to the top of the tree. He was watching me. I was so scared that my hands and feet were trembling. I started running towards the village. It was a difficult journey home. I told my parents what had happened, and my uncle had experienced something similar in the same place. Later, I went to the oldest person in the village and told him what had happened. He said that a long time ago, there were 2 brothers who had a dispute over inheritance. The elder brother had killed the younger brother and dragged his body to the tree I had seen. After that, people had started saying that the spirit of the dead brother was wandering around there.